Warning. The following podcast contains spoilers for the film discussed, as well as strong language. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello, Internet. I'm Nate.
I am Juliet.
I'm Mitch.
And this is the podcast, How Have We Not Seen? Today's movie, which is Mitch's movie, is Donnie Darko.
Specifically?
The director's cut.
Alright. So, Mitch, let's have you ask the standard question we ask every episode.
Guys, how have you not seen this movie?
In all due honesty, well, a few times I've been told, guys, you need to see Donnie Darko. It is a classic movie. Like, it frequently shows up on internet lists of, like, top 10 movies that you need to see that people haven't really heard of. But I just never got around to seeing it because I don't like seeing movies alone. For the most part, I like seeing them with my family members, or, at the very least, oftentimes my family members are the ones who are controlling the TV, and they were never privy to the idea of watching Donnie Darko.
You don't like watching movies alone?
I like watching some movies alone, but, like, when I'm watching a movie for the first time, I like to watch it with at least my dad.
Interesting. I didn't know that, actually.
I could get that, though. Like, movies feel different when you have a group of people with you than when you're alone. Like, specifically comedies as well. It's more funny to watch a comedy with 2 to 3 people than all by yourself.
I was going to say that. It's kind of depressing when you watch a comedy alone.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know when to laugh.
That's why laugh tracks exist, I guess.
Yeah. It's like you're forcing yourself to laugh, too, at certain points. It doesn't feel as natural.
Actually, laugh tracks have a darker origin.
I've never really, felt that way. I just always watch movies by myself, so I have no idea the struggle.
And I have not seen this movie because I had no idea that it existed. I did not know about this movie until Mitch put it on the Google Doc of The List.
The list.
The List.
The list.
So, just never heard of it. No excuse.
Oh, that sounds like a pretty good excuse.
I mean, that's the ultimate excuse. I've never heard
okay.
It was the exact same with yours.
Yeah, with both of you. So,
that again.
Yeah.
If you want to hear that episode, go to episode 2 on our channel.
Shameless plug-in.
Is it a shameless plug-in if it's our own content on our own channel?
Probably. I don't know.
We're new to this. We're new to the internet etiquette, so... meh. All right, Mitch, ask the second question.
I forget the second question.
What do we think this movie's going to be like?
That's a great question, Juliet. What do you think this movie is going to be like?
All right, so one of my coworkers is a big movie buff, and I asked him if he'd seen this movie, and he's like, what do you want to know? And I heard the title, so I assumed it was going to be like jump scare, blood and gore, and he said, no, this is one of those movies that really gets in your mind and is more of a psychological thriller. So I'm expecting to be messed with. I'm expecting a lot of twists and turns. I'm expecting not to get certain parts and have to have them be explained later, or maybe I won't understand them until the film's over. And yeah, I'm expecting to be haunted for days to come.
I'm sorry, Nate. What do you think this movie is going to be like?
I'm expecting a movie with an odd tone, to say at the very least. I'm expecting something that I can't expect. I have no idea how this movie is going to go. I don't know if it's going to be a psychological thriller, a horror, a comedy, all 3. I have no idea. And, like, the very premise that you initially outlined to me, even though it was bare bones, and even that, not the whole skeleton, felt strange, to say that at the very least. So, I have no idea just what the hell I am about to walk into.
I'm not going to say too much, mostly because I'm bad at descriptions.
And also because that's kind of defeats the whole purpose of what we're going to be watching.
Yeah, it's good to go in blind, in my opinion. But I am going to straight up say it's not like a horror. It does have some horror aspects to it, but it's not going to give you nightmares.
Okay.
I don't know. I get weird nightmares.
It does.
You do get weird nightmares.
This could give me nightmares.
Yeah. What kind of nightmares do you have?
Oh.
I told you that one. When I was back working at Target, and then, like, this nice old lady grabbed my ass hard enough to leave bruises.
I don't remember that.
Dirty old lady.
Exactly. I felt the pain in the dream.
Oh.
Yes, it was quite disturbing.
The most disturbing dream I had after watching a movie was I'm a big Phantom fan, and my parents got me an adaptation with Robert Englund, but they didn't read the back. I was 13 years old. This was an R-rated movie I shouldn't have watched until I was 17, 18. So that night I went to bed and I had a dream the Phantom was coming to slit my throat. And so I was 13 years old and I was mature enough, but that night I had to sleep in my parents' room because I was horrified and every shadow on the wall had me jumping.
Isn't Robert Englund the guy who played Freddy Krueger?
Yep, and they made it a slasher movie for him where instead of wearing a mask, the Phantom skins his victims to make it a mask. So, yeah. Freaky deaky.
All right, then. So yeah, that is concluding our first part of the podcast. We are now going to take a brief break while we watch Donnie Darko.
The director's cut.
See you on the other side, my friends.
Wish them luck. And we're back! We just finished watching Donnie Darko, and guys, what did you think of the movie?
I'll let you go first. This is going to take a while for me.
I really liked it. It was not what I was expecting it to be at all. It did not make me shit my pants, but it really made me think, and I feel like I get what happened in this movie, but I don't at the same time. I was intrigued all the way. Yeah, I really like this movie, and I'm fascinated by it.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Nate?
The ending was garbage.
Oh, I'd love to hear your thoughts about
All right.
that.
We'll get into detail with that later, but the preliminaries first.
Preliminaries.
Yes.
A lot of good technical aspects. Did a very good job with visual cues that hint at various elements of the movie. A lot of good dialogue in places. Very distinct flavor. It's just that I did not like that flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
By the way, before we're gonna spoil the hell out of this movie. Like,
yep.
We are going to spoil this movie.
This is going to be a dissection.
This is going to be a straight up dissection. So for those who haven't, please watch this movie.
Yeah, pause the podcast, watch the movie, and then come back and join us for the discussion. We'll give you a few seconds. Okay, so let's talk about this.
All right. What do y'all think happened? Because
okay, I think that he wasn't supposed to die in the original timeline. So basically, he had to let the universe cave in on itself so that way he could go back to the original timeline and then die so that the universe wouldn't end.
What about you, Nate?
That was pretty much the case. He didn't die when he should have, and it created a parallel universe that was collapsing in upon itself because it was something that should not be. And so he had to go back in time and die to make sure that it was going to continue.
All right. I really like the fact that y'all are, like, very close. Like, y'all basically got the gist of it. At least from what I could glean, because, you know, I mean, there's been, like, multiple people talking about what this movie is about, and based on what I've gathered and thought myself, they're very close. The director's cut. The reason why I specified it's the director's cut is because it adds scenes that make figuring out what the hell happened in this movie very, not obvious, but a lot easier to follow.
But is that better?
I think it is better because I would not have been able to follow the movie as much if those chapters from the book were not put in there. Because that helped kind of keep me on track and kind of see if I could figure out what was coming. That foreshadowing with those chapters really helped me. If those hadn't been there, I think I would have been lost. Like, I would have wondered what the water was coming out of his chest, why Frank was surrounded by a barrier of water. I think it would have been a bit more difficult for me to figure out. I mean, I would have speculated and maybe have made some accurate guesses, but it was nice to have... It didn't feel like the director was holding your hand with that, but acknowledging that this is a pretty difficult script, so here's just some little things to help you figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Why make a movie so deliberately ambiguous and then make elements that make it less ambiguous, such as that book? It's like cramming stuff down our throat, saying, "Nuh-uh, this is how we want it to go." Not to mention, the book itself was inconsistent.
Inconsistent how?
Points that are brought up, such as the powers that he's supposed to get because he is the living.
Nope.
Is that the term for it?
The chosen receiver.
The chosen receiver. He didn't get any of the powers specified, and not even in a thematic sense.
Mitch has a knowing smile on his face.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited.
Also, like some of the paragraphs above and below the highlighted bits were kind of dumb. Like, the idea of the artifacts being metal, just like the arrowheads of Mayan civilizations. The Mayans did not use metal in their arrowheads.
Yeah, that one I'll give
They
you.
used obsidian
Yeah.
and other stone or bone or shit like that. They didn't use metal.
That I'll give you. But I'm excited that we're talking about this, because he actually did get those powers.
What power?
Huh?
He did. The powers of, I believe it was fire, telekinesis, and strength.
So is it fire building down the house?
The thing is, did y'all see him have any lighter matches? Anything like that?
What?
I mean, he had gasoline, but
Yeah, he had gasoline.
did he have anything to light it with?
It'd be very easy to find matches in a guy's house.
Alright.
They don't have to show it to let us know that he set the house on fire.
Let's talk about the statue and the,
Was that the telekinesis?
No, that was actually super strength. The telekinesis is when he tore off the engine of the plane.
Wait, he tore off the engine of the plane?
He tore off the engine to the plane and sent... Here's what I've gleaned. I'm actually
He uses his powers to ensure his own death.
It's called the insurance trap. That is...
Oh, like what they said in the book!
Like they said in the book.
Oh, okay.
Alright, so, here's what I got from this. There is the main timeline, and in the main timeline, something happened.
He gets smushed.
We'll get to that later, but I'm talking, like, something happened. I'm talking about, like, there is a rip in space-time for no reason. Something of the sort. Something happens, and main timeline is going to end.
Or it could just be that these rips are very common, but we just don't know about it because they get corrected.
Fair, yeah.
Oh, that's a good
fair.
theory.
Who says that
fair
Donnie
enough.
Darko was the first guy who had to ensure his own demise in this scenario?
It wasn't. That's why that book was written.
I wonder if Robin Sparrow is the constant here. If she's the constant in all the universes where people have been stuck in these timelines. That would be interesting.
We're talking about the main timeline.
Yeah.
Alright, so, Donnie has his first encounter with Frank the Bunny. He sleepwalks out of his house and meets Frank, who tells him that they have 28 days, 6 hours, 42 minutes, and 12 seconds before the world ends.
Mm-hmm.
Him sleepwalking to meet with Frank is Frank manipulating him to sleepwalk. That is the insurance trap. The insurance trap is to make sure he doesn't die. And so, the rest of the universe, or the rest of the time from that point onward, is a parallel universe.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
And then, they're going through it. I'm not even going to get into the psychology of Donnie and any of the stuff yet. I'm just trying to give my basic outline of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
It goes through the timeline. Gretchen, I believe her name was, she is what's called the manipulated living, which is a living person in the parallel universe manipulating the receiver, trying to get him to do the right things to prevent the destruction of the main universe. And Frank the Bunny is what's called the manipulated dead.
Oh, okay.
So, the parallel universe happens. Frank gets shot. That ensures that he is able to stop Donnie from dying in the main universe. Alright, so, after all of this, like everything, we're at the end of the movie now.
Mm-hmm.
Donnie he's at the end of the movie, and he basically sends the engine back in time, because he has the ability to. Which I know sounds far-fetched, but that is the only way that it appeared in his main universe. And he sends it back in time to when he was in his bed. But because Frank is not there to save him, Donnie dies. And so, with his death, there is no infinite loop of him going into the tangent universe.
Mm-hmm.
His death ensures the death itself of the tangent universe. It doesn't create a tangent universe. Basically,
Hence the aforementioned end of the world.
Basically, time stops in the main universe, and everything from the movie is in the tangent universe, all up to the point where Donnie actually dies. Alright, that's what I've gleaned out of it. What do y'all think about that?
You know, I think that kind of answers, goes back to when I said I did and didn't get this movie. Mm-hmm. I feel like Nate explained it really well and made it clear, but I think the breakdown that you did made it even clearer. Mm-hmm. Nate?
Thoughts, my man?
as I've said before, the ending was garbage. It's not so much the technical aspects of the film, which I've already praised. It is more of, I didn't like, at least to me, what kind of message they seem to be sending. Like, oh my gosh, you need to die in order to ensure that all these good things will happen. And just something about that feels disgusting.
Well, I would argue...
Because Donnie is a troubled young man.
I would argue that the one good thing that won't happen was Patrick Swayze's character getting arrested for the kiddie porno ring, but does that even exist in the main universe now? Or was that just a dream? Was that just part of the tangent universe and that's not like...
That is a part of the main universe. Like,
so he does have a kiddie porno ring in the main universe as well.
Yeah.
A kiddie porn dungeon, as they described.
So...
I believe that the main point of the movie isn't the fact that he has to die. I think it's more just about figuring out what happened in the actual story itself. Like, I don't think it's meaning to say that he has to die. But
it absolutely is saying that he has to die.
Well, what's your argument that it isn't?
Of it is that he didn't die, and that's what created the tangent universe.
Well, no, I mean, like, how do I put it? I don't think that's what the movie is trying to promote. It's just trying to tell a certain story.
Well, even if it didn't intend to promote this, it felt like they were promoting that, and that's something I definitely did not like.
I think it was more about, like, a rebuttal to the whole infinite time loop thing. Like, I thought it was an interesting way to get himself out of an infinite time loop.
Oh, like what his dad was saying earlier, if they tell you something they don't like, then tell them fuck you? Maybe his death was the fuck you?
I wouldn't say that. I just thought it was, like, the director's way of subverting the infinite time loop paradox, or whatever it's called. But that's me. And I understand what you mean by that, though. Now that you mention it, yeah. It's not the best thing to, how did you put it?
Say death is the only way out?
Yeah. Something like that.
Donnie is a very troubled individual, as we're introduced with, and it just feels like the kind of logic that a lot of these people try to justify, suicide attempts with, like, oh, all these things would be better if I were gone, and stuff will continue on, and it's a disgusting mentality that I felt like it was kind of encouraging, because they got a lot of stuff right in the beginning with family dynamics when one of your, or more of your, family members is ill in one way or another, and it made me very uncomfortable to watch. And, like, if someone was trying to promote this idea in my family, no. Just no.
I understand.
The movie was technically well made. It's like a fish taco. Think about it that way.
What's wrong with fish tacos?
Let me continue. Thing that is, it could be a very technically well made thing. Balances the flavors nicely, uses good cooking techniques, but I absolutely hate fish. This movie was technically very well made, good dialogue, good characterization, but ultimately, the themes behind it repelled me.
Interesting analogy.
I get that.
Yeah, okay.
I understand that. Alright.
So,
let's talk about some of the characters.
Should we start with Donnie?
Yeah, let's start with them.
Okay, I thought that Jake Gyllenhaal did a great job portraying this character. I'd never seen any of his performances in any movies before, but he's always gotten good reviews, and now I can see why. I think you could tell that this was a very complex person, based on, like, not just his dialogue, but also the little things that Jake Gyllenhaal did with his eyes, with the tiny smile that he would give, the sessions in hypnosis where his voice totally changed and took on a fetal position. And I also feel like this character is really interesting because, in today's society we're talking a lot about the stigma around mental health. And I thought that it was really interesting to view from today's lens. Mm-hmm. Nate?
Well, you covered a lot of things, but I also feel like they make him a very nihilistic character. It also feels like they kind of deconstruct it at the same time. Like, I heard that a lot of emo people are fond of this movie, but I can't really see why. I mean, like, his own navel-gazing, nihilistic attitude actually shoots himself in the foot, so to say, or crushes himself underneath a giant turbine.
One could say that's... I don't know, I guess you could say that's what they had in mind when writing that kind of thing. But, yeah, I found Jake Gyllenhaal's he did a very good job. like, all the actors were fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in my opinion, it was great. Yeah, I think that's about it for Donnie.
For Donnie?
All right. What about the other members of his family?
I thought at first his parents were going to be portrayed as, like, the stereotypical white rich parents who are distant from their kids and don't really care. But I thought that they evolved a lot over the course of the movie, and you could tell that, no, these parents do really care about their kids. They don't understand them at first, but they make a real effort, as opposed to, like, the stereotypical, I'm a cool mom, or whatever.
I'm a cool mom.
The parents did feel very human. I did like the portrayal of the mom, especially considering that it's played by the lady who plays Laura Roslin in Battlestar Galactica.
I haven't seen that, actually.
Me neither.
On to the list, Ethan.
It's a TV show, not a movie.
But I am watching it with my parents at some point, I think, so we're going to cover that.
Well then, I did like the human depiction. They're not caricatures of the typical movie parents who are overbearing or distant or unhelpful. I kind of felt the other siblings were superfluous to the plot.
Yeah, I feel like having Maggie Gyllenhaal in there, well, I like her too. She was great in Dark Knight. I was like, okay, well, what's their purpose? I mean, I get having the daughter and the dance competition, having to go onto the plane, and it's the same plane with the jet turbine that fell and crashed through their house. Mm-hmm. But they just, yeah, Maggie Gyllenhaal's character just felt kind of throwaway.
I feel as though, at least with the family, yeah, they weren't exactly in the main spotlight of the entire film. Mm. I feel like the focus was more on... You sounded like you wanted to say something.
I was just going to say something about his friends, actually, but that can come later.
All right.
Oh, we'll get to them.
I feel like the point of his family was to show the fact that... Like, to show the fact that he wasn't very close with them at first. Like, he was... You could tell he was somewhat distant, at least a little bit, with his parents, his sister, or his older sister. I believe her name was Elizabeth. Mm. They weren't a perfect family. And I feel as though when he realized that the world was going to end, he started embracing them more, and he tried to make better connections with them. At least that's what I thought, because at least in the beginning, when he didn't know whether or not this was actually... the end of the world, he wasn't really too keen.
That beginning dinner scene was uncomfortably familiar.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been there at least a few times. It's good writing.
It is good writing. It's very good writing.
But I just appreciate how they focus on Donnie's, what's the term? Not mindset. Psychology? I don't know, but I just appreciate how they focused on how his
headspace?
His headspace was, his mental health throughout the entire film. Because at first he was skeptic, and he wasn't really too sure about the end of the world. But as the plot went on, he just got more erratic. He got more nihilistic, I would say. A lot more nihilistic, and he got, I wouldn't say angrier, but he...
Manic.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and he tried to do things. I mean, like, the end of the world is coming. Let me spend some time with my family and whatnot. Let me try and make better connections with them. Meanwhile, I'm also being haunted by a manipulated dead.
In a rabbit costume.
Who I shot and killed.
Yeah.
Which he didn't know at the time.
There's also the symbolism behind Frank's rabbit costume. In many cultures, rabbits are a symbol of cowardice, which is quite understandable. Rabbits are entirely, flight over fight. Like, this movie would have been a bit different if Frank had been wearing a dog costume or a cat costume. But no, they specifically chose a bunny. As if Frank was representative of Donnie's fears of death. And is when he kills Frank that he's willing to get crushed by the turbine. And that is one of those other things that really kind of soured the movie experience for me.
The thing with the bunny, I felt that that was a rather psychotic twist on. Have you ever heard of the play Harvey?
No.
Nope.
So it's a comedic play. In the film, it was Jimmy Stewart. I haven't seen the movie, but what I know is it's about this man who pretends that he sees a bunny rabbit who is about the same size as him and is his best friend, and he names him Harvey. And I thought, did the filmmakers take a dark twist on that intentionally or no? Because that would be something interesting to explore, whereas instead of just having, like, this sweet imaginary friend, you have, like, this psychotic person that's time traveled here and manipulates you into lighting people's houses on fire and flooding your school.
That is... You're both giving very interesting perspectives on that, and that's... I never really thought about either of those, or really the significance of the bunny costume. By the way, we moved on to Frank the Bunny.
Well, we already said his family is pretty superfluous in a lot of regards. It's not like we can spend a lot of time on them.
Fair enough. But I just thought it was not a consequence, well, maybe a consequence of the fact that they had to focus on Watership Down in part of the movie as well. Referencing...
Focus that was not in the theatrical cut.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, my man over here was checking the differences between the director's cut and the theatrical cut in the middle of the movie to see what was up there, because I'd only seen the director's cut.
I thought the Watership Down comparisons were really interesting.
Well, the only comparison really is that they have rabbits. Watership Down is completely different in tone. It's it has violence. Yes, the rabbits are they savage each other, but it's all about the hope of building a community and not dying when you're supposed to.
Oh, the antithesis of this. So maybe they did that for contrast.
See, I can't say anything.
I'm like, one character has psychotic visions in a way, hallucinations, but it's treated more in almost like a biblical prophetic sense rather than the whole, you gotta die so that everybody is, I don't know, you gotta die to save the world, which is just like, ugh. And like, not to mention his whole rant when he's talking about how, the rabbits, all they just do is fuck. They don't have history books or any of that stuff. Like, the rabbits in Watership Down don't have a writing system or even a good grasp of mathematics, but they have culture and they have history and they have mythology. They have El Herrera, the Prince of 1,000 Enemies. They also have their own version of the Grim Reaper.
I think that was Donnie's nihilism really coming into play, because that was nearer to the end of the movie. And at that point, I'm pretty sure he had full faith in the fact that the world was ending, and he was like, fuck it, fuck this, fuck everything. So, he was really fed up.
Yeah.
He was just fed up, and that he just said his thoughts, because why not?
Can we talk about the two most batshit characters in this movie, the gym teacher and Patrick Swayze's character, for a sec, just to lighten the mood a little bit?
Oh my god, lighten the mood, okay.
Child pornographer sure does lighten the mood.
Yeah.
I was caught off guard by the fact that they cast Patrick Swayze as a kitty diddler.
I thought that was brilliant casting, because when they were showing his motivational films, I was like, that's exactly the same crap we would have had to watch in high school about how to turn your life around and self-motivation and being a leader. And it just had it just reeked of 80s. And of course, Patrick Swayze was like a big movie star in the 80s with Dirty Dancing and Ghost. And they had
Roadhouse.
and they had him in the 80s mullet, and he's just standing there all charismatic and full of shit, and I'm just like, oh, this is great.
And the kid's full of Patrick Swayze.
Okay.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Okay.
This is a movie without God.
That's actually a fair point of the movie as well, the focus on God as well.
Yeah, it was kind of weird when the therapist started talking about God. I'm pretty sure therapists aren't allowed to talk about
she was a
stuff.
shit therapist. She was a shit therapist. What was up with her making his medications placebos? Is she allowed to do that?
I mean,
therapists have no control. Therapists have no control over what medications you get. They only can send notes on your psychologist to psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist is the guy who's in charge of what medications you get and what quantities.
Maybe she didn't give him the medication.
No, the therapist doesn't give him the medication.
No, that's what I'm saying. Maybe she didn't give him the medication. Maybe she just knew that they were placebos.
I feel like the therapist
didn't. The psychiatrist wouldn't give them placebos either. I could see that in very bad psychological studies from the 60s, like MK Ultra kind of shit. But in the late 80s like this, no. Even back then, you couldn't just fake the pills.
I feel like
that would have, especially considering how much money they probably spent for those.
I mean, yeah, that's true. This is like a rich people neighborhood.
Yeah.
Xanax ain't cheap.
It ain't cheap.
I feel like the therapist in this movie was like the stereotypical therapist who doesn't know how to connect with their patients, who doesn't know what's going on.
Why do they like to show therapists in movies as ineffectual?
I know, therapists are really awesome people, but I don't know. Something about this therapist just rubbed me the wrong way. I thought she was ineffectual. And then the gym teacher.
Oh, God.
She didn't feel like a gym teacher.
I don't know what the hell she was. I thought she was like a life skills coach or something.
I forgot that she was a gym teacher.
It didn't seem like she should be teaching at that school. And then my favorite and least favorite part at the same time was when she learned that the Patrick Swayze motivational speaker she'd been worshiping had a kiddie porno dungeon. And I laughed at the schadenfreude of seeing her philosophy just break apart. But then she's like, oh, no, I'm gonna establish a defense fund for him. And I think in my head, she probably would have been a Trump supporter if she was around today. Yeah. And then the best quote is like, I thought you were committed to Sparkle Nation.
I thought it was Sparkle Motion.
Sparkle Motion. I thought you were committed to Sparkle Motion. She's such a dance mom. It's terrible.
They made her character so ridiculous in this movie.
Oh no, those dance moms and I'll even say theater moms, those are totally real. That's not even that much of an exaggeration. I've seen those women before and they're, oh God.
It's unfortunate, yeah. There are a lot of people actually like that.
Yeah. And then when they actually did the dance, that's the one thing that pisses me off about most studios that teach girls dances, that they have to sexualize them for no reason. That
reminds me of a talking point that I'd like to get into later. First, we should continue covering some of the characters.
Okay. Do we want to get into shit friends then?
Alright, shit friends. I do feel like they served as a deconstruction of the typical high school protagonist friends in that... Okay, in a lot of movies, especially movies where the main character is a teenager, right? He often has friends, and they often provide comic relief, and they often prove helpful in one way or another at the end.
These friends were not helpful.
They feel like a deconstruction. They didn't feel like friends. They felt more like people that just kind of hung out around in the same vicinity as Donnie Darko. They weren't helpful. They looked like they were going to be helpful when they were biking with them. Fucking E.T. shit right there.
That was amazing. I was like, oh my God.
Ultimately, they don't do anything, and they're not even that funny.
I thought, like, his friends were also, like a deconstruction, but, like, I felt like the entire school and schooling system that he had as well was also kind of a deconstruction, at least of, like, a private school setting. Because, like, you know, there's this idea that private schools are the best, and that
They're not.
They're not. That's the thing. The reality, at least... from what I've seen.
But yeah, from what I've heard, because I know some people who went to private school, it's like, the drug culture is insane. They can get their hands on any alcohol that they want. And, like, you know, this is all what I've heard from hearsay, but from what I've heard, like, the environments in private schools are really unhealthy and cliquey, and, like, they can negatively affect mental health.
What's this? Rich people are assholes. News at 11.
Oh my gosh. One thing I also like is the fact that I'd completely missed this in my first rewatch. It's been a long time for me, but I like the fact that during the conversation with, I believe it was Dr. Monatoff, Donnie's, I'm guessing, science teacher, when they were discussing the whole thing about time and God, that they actually covered the subject that Dr. Monatoff couldn't talk about God without potentially losing his job.
Yeah.
Like, I appreciate how they at least mentioned that.
And handled it, yeah.
Yeah, because that's something you really do need to, you know, watch out for at a school like that.
Dr. Monatoff was quite useful, helpful. I also liked that, at the very least, they didn't go for the cliched wormhole example where someone folds a sheet of paper and like, now you gotta imagine that this paper is the space-time continuum, and if you want to get from point A to point B, what's the quickest route? Straight, right? But if you want to go faster, you fold space-time, and then you punch a pencil through it. They fucking had that in Interstellar. They had it in Stranger Things. They had it in Event Horizon, and they've had it in like TV shows and, and documentaries. And
they have it in Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle, which is one of my favorite books of all time.
At the very least, did the example of a string in an ant.
Yeah.
We're talking about the book, of course, not the garbage movie.
I haven't seen either of them.
There's a TV movie that I have on DVD.
I mean, I can.
I see a book.
If I'm not blind. But, yeah, I mean, I guess that's, like, a famous thing and, like, really used a lot because it's a pretty good description of how something like that might work. I mean, what other good examples is there apart from the Spring and the Ants? I don't know, that's me though. Like, my man Nate here, he's super into sci-fi and all that stuff.
Science!
You'll notice, like, that half of the movies that we will be reviewing on my part will be science fiction.
Yeah.
Yep.
More than half.
So, like, you've probably seen that example used half a dozen times at least.
Done to death.
Yeah.
At this point, almost everybody knows what a wormhole is.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about the English teacher portrayed by Drew Barrymore, who at one point looked like one of our English teachers in high school?
Oh, I have no idea which one you mean.
Oh, I'll tell you later.
She was fairly decent. Obviously Drew Barrymore. She's great.
I love Drew Barrymore.
You know, she's awesome.
Her one note was she got in trouble for a book, and then she got fired, and she occasionally made mention of Frank. That was about it. I mean, like, this is the discussion I mentioned that I wanted to get into. This movie feels like it reaches to try to comment on so many things, such as censorship in schools, the fake motivational speakers, the bullying issues in school, the issues of rich schools, such as what we mentioned before, the drugs and all that, the politics of the 80s. It feels like it tries to reach at all of these, but it overextends itself, and it fails at really discussing all of these.
I feel as though, like, I felt they did a good job.
Too many cooks ruin the soup. In this case,
Too many cooks.
In this case,
Sorry.
in this case, they tried to cram in too many talking points into it, and it became bloated as a result.
I do feel like at some points in this movie I was like, how long is this? Like, I was still interested, don't get me wrong, but at one point I was like, oh man, when are they going to finally get to the end of the universe as we know it?
Yeah, this movie was supposed to be 2 hours, but it felt longer.
It did feel longer to me, too.
They had a lot of information, and they threw it at the audience quite a bit.
Oh, no. I watch information-dense movies and stuff like that. This was more of something carrying... This was a boat that got overstocked, and it sank.
I wouldn't say that. I think it was more of a focus on Donnie being in this environment that was pretty bullshit, to say the least. Like, you know, we can all agree that Jen Cunningham, the school system... Cunningham, excuse me. You know, everything else.
Because he ain't coming in ham.
Yeah, don't...
So we're not gonna go with that joke! We are not!
But I just felt it was more of a focus on Donnie than anything. And
He was the integral
that's why
character.
the movie is called Donnie Darko.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, can we just say, is like a great title for this movie. And it's I don't know if it's how good of it is a character name, but as soon as you hear the title, like with the alliteration of the two D's, and you're just like, ooh, that sounds intriguing. I want to know what this is about.
I love the comment in the movie, like it's, like it doesn't really sound like a name, it sounds like some superhero name.
Like a noir kind of comic book character.
It's I, Donnie Darko.
Hey, I'm Donnie Darko. I don't know what the hell that accent was. I've done better, I promise.
Sounded like a shitty Brooklyn accent.
Yeah, I haven't been training that very well. What else was I going to talk about? Oh, can we just talk about how the fact when, Jim Cunningham came to the school and Donnie Darko came up to the mic, we all knew. We just burst out laughing like he was going to take this guy apart.
Top 10 haunting photos before disaster.
Donnie had that look in his... Just looking at his face, you could tell he was ready.
Can we also give a shout out to the Nickelodeon actors that were in that scene? Like, I was not expecting Jerry Traynor from Drake and Josh and iCarly to be in this movie.
What's her name? Who played Stephanie, I think her name was, in The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody was in this too.
Yeah, it was like, oh my god! Like, the nostalgia train just hit me, and I was not expecting that in this movie.
Or how about Seth Rogen as a psychotic bully?
And the first line he says is, I like your boobs.
Yeah, he had 3 lines.
I tried to do a Seth Rogen laugh and I failed, but seriously, it was kind of odd seeing him in such a manner. Like, you know, there was a lot of cases of actors defying their typical roles. And you had Patrick Swayze as a kid diddler. You had Seth Rogen as a psychotic bully. Those are the only 2 I can think of right now.
Yeah.
They had the son of the crop duster from Independence Day as an ominous...
As Frank.
As the manipulated dead. That was kind of weird.
I just found it interesting how they had all these, like, great actors, like...
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, when did Independence Day come out?
1996.
And this came out, you said, in 2001, right?
About, yeah. Yeah, in fact...
It came out a month after 9/11. That's why it bombed at the box office.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately. But, yeah, I just found it interesting how they had so many, like, great actors that were, I wouldn't say derailed to side characters, but they were more background characters than anything, and I just found
They were cameos.
Yeah, they
were cameos.
I mean, like, for the guy who played Spencer and Stephanie, I think her name is, I'm probably wrong, but they were more just, like, they weren't even cameos at that point.
It felt jarring. It was like, what are you guys doing here?
Exactly.
You should be over at Nickelodeon.
It was like watching people before and after. It was like reverse nostalgia or something.
Yeah.
It was just interesting.
Is there anything else about this movie we want to talk about?
What are your thoughts on how they did time? Because time manipulation could be a lot different. Like, they did it... I don't know how to explain it. They did it more, like, do you think time is deterministic in this universe? That's what I should say.
According to what we know of physics, time is not deterministic. You have the uncertainty principle.
I actually meant in the Donnie universe. My bad. I should have been more specific. Like, based on what you saw, do y'all think it was deterministic, or do you think it was free?
How can there be a loop if you break it? If you break the loop, then there never was a loop. When you're talking about time travel shit, man.
I have no input
But then
on
if
this.
there's no loop to break, why do you have to break it?
It's
when you're going to do time travel shit like this, there's going to be paradoxes riddled throughout, like plot holes in a Roland Emmerich movie.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. I mean, that's the whole point of, like, the infinite... What is it, the grandfather paradox? Like, I find that, you know...
Grandfather paradox, you mean you go back in time and shoot your own grandfather.
Yeah. Which makes it, you know, where you weren't born to go back in time and shoot your own grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mentioned before, you know, the way out of that is to kill the person before they shoot their grandfather, which is an interesting idea, I suppose, to subvert the whole grandfather paradox thing. But I found that to be interesting, especially with, like, the water coming out of the chest of everybody. Like,
The phallic water.
Was that water, or was that, like, rippling of space-time?
I think it could be viewed, not as both, but, like, rippling of space-time portrayed as water. Do you think that was determining everyone else, or do you think that was just what everyone else was going to do?
I think it was what everyone else... Maybe a bit of both. What everyone else was going to do, and maybe also determining what they were going to do, if that makes sense.
Damned if I know, man. Why do you look at me like that?
Because you're the science expert!
I'm not the science expert. I flunked out of physics.
Honey, we're just getting opinions.
We're trying.
But do you think that Donnie could have... Like, remember the scene where he's sitting down and he sees his own column of water coming out of him?
I call it a space stick.
Space stick.
Because it was phallic. It was phallic. I was like, what the hell is this emerging from his chest?
But do you think when Donnie's space stick was coming out of his chest, like a goddamn alien...
You don't get to talk... Oh, actually, you have seen Alien. I was going to say, you can't talk about that, Juliet, because you haven't seen Alien yet.
I've seen that clip parodied, though, in Spaceballs.
Ah, good movie. But, like, when you saw that come out of it, do you think he could have not followed it? Or do you feel as though he was more intrigued to follow it than to actually follow it?
Well, what was the title he was given? The, not the manipulated, but what was it?
The Living Receiver, I believe.
The Living Receiver, so maybe he receives those actions, so I don't think he had a choice in that matter.
What do you think, Mr. Nathan?
About the space stick. Well, he followed it anyway.
He did follow it.
So, did he have a choice not to follow it?
I just find that interesting to think about. That's the thing I like to, you know, think about when I see stuff like this in movies.
What, guys in bunny suits and space sticks? This movie is very much itself.
Yeah.
Very much itself.
Can you
like that.
Can you imagine if they tried to remake this movie? That would go horrible. That would go horrible.
I don't want to think about that.
Me neither. That would be... This movie is very much its own thing.
Yeah.
Do you have any anecdotes for us about this movie?
I feel as though Nathan has more anecdotes. Cause,
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, you were looking at stuff in the middle of the movie. Like, you were checking out stuff on the wiki and whatnot, or Wikipedia, I should say.
You know what differences between the director's cut and the...
Did you glean anything interesting out of it?
all the close-up of his eyes were not in the theatrical cut.
Yeah, there was a lot added to the director's cut.
There was some very artsy
Like
shots.
they added like a full 18 minutes.
Wow, I didn't know it was that much.
Yeah. This movie was under 2 hours originally.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
So that explains why the pacing felt a little too long.
Yeah.
One day I'd like to actually watch the theatrical release, because...
And see if it's any better?
Theatrical release is way more ambiguous. They don't have the book entries.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
why I want to watch it. Not to see if it's better, but to see what it was like for people who haven't gotten all the added stuff to it. Like, obviously, I have the privilege of knowing everything because of the director's cut and, like, online stuff and thinking about it, but...
Yeah, you clearly are very enraptured by this movie.
I like it. This is why it's on my list, and this is why it's my first pick.
Yeah, the detail you were able to contribute to this episode was really amazing. I loved it.
Thanks. It's a good movie.
So, do we want to wrap up this episode with our final thoughts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thoughts, everybody?
Alright, so I would say this movie is definitely not for everyone. I would probably say, if you want to find out whether or not to watch this movie, maybe go online and watch the original trailer to figure out if you want to watch it.
I don't know. For all we know, the trailer is garbage.
I actually
I don't
haven't
know.
seen it.
Well, I would just say maybe do like a little bit of research about the movie before you watch it. And, you know, in my opinion, I liked this movie. I thought it was interesting. Would I watch it again? No, I feel like you need to watch this once and then it'll stay with you. And you could go back for a rewatch, sure, but I personally would not.
I feel as though, like, it could use a few more rewatches to figure out what it's all about, but that's me, though.
Mr. Nate.
Great execution, but overall, the central themes repelled me.
Mm-hmm.
It manages to be very ambiguous, especially if you go by the theatrical cut, but I feel that it overreaches, which is kind of funny because another way of saying overreaching is pretentious, but it's pretentious not because of its ambiguous themes. I mean, not because of its ambiguous nature due to the whole time travel and the clearly less than stable foundation of this guy's mind, but pretentious in the way that it tries to address so many aspects of our culture at once that it fails to do anyone justice.
I get that, yeah. Alright. That's Donnie Darko, the director's cut. Juliet. No. Whose turn? Is it
It's
Nate's?
Nate's turn.
It's my turn next time.
I have a bad memory, everybody.
It's alright. Alright, Nate, what is next episode's movie going to be?
Next episode's movie, though a bit late, will be Muppet Christmas Carol.
Yay! Oh, yay! That sounds like so much fun. Oh.
I'm looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to it too. I'm really
It's been a while
excited.
since I've seen that.
You know, what I love about when the Muppets do parodies of things is that they are very smart about what they're doing. They're very true to the source material, but at the same time, the humor is so stupid.
And
it's great.
And to clarify Mitch's statement, even though he has seen it before, it has been so long that he remembers none of the details.
Yeah, that's very true.
So that's still fine, because if you don't really remember it that well, then we can rewatch it. It counts, yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to confess, like, I saw about half of this movie in middle school, but people were talking over it, so I couldn't hear most of it, and I don't remember most of it. I only remember, like, one scene and, like, 30 seconds of a scene in particular.
You know what? I actually don't think I've seen the entire thing.
I haven't seen the entire thing either.
I've only seen it in school. So, yeah, it counts even more now.
Yep.
Plebeians. Alright then. And that concludes our review of Donnie Darko, and next time you join us, we will be reviewing A Christmas Carol Muppet Edition.
See you later, guys.
Later.
Like and subscribe.
Bye. Hello, Internet, and welcome to the podcast, How Have We Not Seen? I'm Nate.
I am Juliet.
I'm Mitchell.
And today we are reviewing the movie Donnie Darko.
Specifically,
The director's cut.
Okay, so this is your...
I'm sorry.
God damn you, Mitch.
No,